Broadcasting from the campus of Salisbury University, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. It's time for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
Classical music still lives on Delmarva. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. It's been around 30 years since the moment that Salisbury Symphony Orchestra was born. In 1985, Dr. Thomas Elliott became chairman of the music department at Salisbury University. A year later, his dream of symphony orchestra was realized under University President Tom Bellavance. Elliott retired in around 2004, and Dr. Jeffrey Schoen took up his position in about 2008. He is an accomplished cellist and took over as the new conductor. This morning, we want to talk about the history of the symphony, also where it's going, and really the future also of classical music. And we are privileged to have both of them in the studio this morning. Welcome to the program, first of all.
Thank you. Don. Thank you.
Let me just start with Dr. Elliott. So you come to the university in 1985.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about when this idea of an orchestra came about, and what was and I know you had this interaction certainly with Tom Bellavance.
Sure. Well, I took my office in August of '85, and it was in September that a dear friend of mine, Robin Cockey, who is also an accomplished violinist and a lawyer, came to me and asked me if I would start an orchestra. And he really wasn't sure about whether I was talking about adults or kids. They had started an orchestra here several times under Virginia Russell and Jesse Fleming. And they had made numerous starts with a youth orchestra with Robin Cockey and Jim Andrews. And they didn't take hold. And I was trying to decide how to approach this thing. I wanted to have such an ensemble on campus and for the people of the Eastern Shore. So I got together with some of the string players in the area. And amazingly to me, they turned me on to some other string players that no one had really thought about asking to come together. And so we drew some string players from up in Dover, Delaware, and down in Accomack County and all around the shore. And we put together our first orchestra of 25 players. And it was totally an experiment to see if we could stay together. And we relied on our choral strength at the university and did the Fauré Requiem. And that we could do with a supporting organ player, Ray Ziegler, one of my colleagues on the faculty. And we presented ourselves on stage for the first time in Holloway Hall. And it was okay.
I was going to say, how was it?
It was okay. We got through it, and there were some moments that showed we had some potential, maybe, really unsure. And we established a Sunday night schedule because these folks had to come from all over the place, and Sunday seemed to be the only time they could get together. So that's what happened, and we met in the annex, the old building behind the Holloway Hall, and we began rehearsing simple pieces. I contacted several friends of mine from Massachusetts, where I came from, and Natalo Paella, one of the trumpet players with the Boston Symphony, good friend of mine, said he would be willing to come and play, and he brought one of his disciples, and we opened up our first public concert with totally orchestral music and unsupported by any other groups, and these two soloists. And that launched for me the first real concert by the SSO.
Let me ask you, what was that night like for you? I mean, were you nervous?
Yes, very nervous. Under rehearsed. We get one Sunday night if they come, And so it's a wing and a prayer out there, and we don't know if we're going to get through or not. And I just loathe the idea of having to stop and start. But, that's simply not in the Bible, according to my conducting experience. But we persevered, and we carried on and played that concert. We had a small audience, but enthusiastic people. And I met several of them for the first time, and there began our patrons that supported the symphony. The next thing happened was Dr. Bellavance asked me to perform for the beginning of a new radio station, WSCL. And we met on stage, and the president of public radio came and gave the inaugural speech for WSCL, and we played, and he announced, "My Lord, now they have a radio station and a symphony orchestra." Well, you should have seen the president beaming over there in the corner. He was just so happy with it. And he met with me afterwards, and I really appreciated his enthusiasm. And he said, "I want a Salisbury Symphony Orchestra, Salisbury State Symphony Orchestra, excuse me." And I said, "Well, let me talk with the players about that. Most of them have already been to college." But so we talked about it. We didn't want to be the school orchestra. We wanted to be a regional orchestra. That was my bent, and I was pushing for that. And I pushed for that all the way through my tenure at the head of the orchestra. And so you have now, and you have had since '87, the Salisbury Symphony Orchestra at Salisbury State College and then Salisbury University. And that allowed us the freedom to still dream about regional membership. The people of the Eastern Shore deserved it. And I thought we could provide it. And the university was the best place for it to be safe and get some support. And we continued our movements up and down the Eastern Shore. We played in every county except 2 during my years. And we met with people in all those areas, and we developed our patrons program. And that was where we got our financial support other than from the university, and we got so much from them.
Let me ask this. So how did you find players to come in? I mean, and how did you, what was your criteria? What was your emphasis in terms of what you were looking for a player?
All right. We're talking now, first of all, strings. And that string quest took us all over the Eastern Shore. And we found 2 cello players down in Accomack, and they were good cello players. And what were they doing down there? So we got them to come up and be in the orchestra. I had friends at Peabody Institute, and we went there to seek student players who wanted a chance to play in a symphony orchestra and would come cheaply, believe it or not. My players all housed students from Peabody and other people that came a long way to play in the orchestra. So what you have is a magnet. We're drawing players. I found 3 string players in Easton. They remained with me until they passed away, and one still remains, or was there, MJ. I can't remember. But these people drove that distance every Sunday night for rehearsal, and they were loyal. I found a viola player in Easton, and he was a graduate of the SUNY system and a good viola player. Well, come to find out, he knew another viola player in Easton. And so I got him and Meredith Buxton, her name was, and Don, her husband, played violin. They came in. I heard about a small group in Dover that played just for the fun of it, and I went to their rehearsal, and I invited them to come down and play in a bigger orchestra. They had a small group, So about 4 of them came down and joined the violin section.
And what qualities were you looking for in them?
We're looking for people who could get around the instrument in a reasonable speed and accuracy, and had experience and knew what we're talking about when we talk about a string ensemble. Playing in tune was, of course, the biggest effort, and getting them to take the music home and learn it and come back and be able to do it was another major criteria of how do you pick out who you want and what happens when you get somebody who couldn't do it. Then you have to be very gentle but firm about not allowing that to happen. And so we set a standard. And it wasn't very high at first, but
it did improve.
It did improve. Yes, sir.
We're going to play just a little touch here of the Salisbury Symphony Orchestra that played, and this is actually one of the 3 pieces that you played from Schindler's List. This is the Kristallnacht, the beginning of the Holocaust. So let's just hear a little bit of that.
Okay.
That, of course, again, was the Salisbury Symphony Orchestra playing from 3 pieces, actually, from Schindler's List. That was the Schindler's List from the Kristallnacht, of course, the beginning of the Holocaust. I want to turn to Dr. Jeffrey Shoyan. Now, as I understand it, Elliot here retired in 2004. You came in about 2005. So what was that like? And I mean, I guess I'll put it politely. So what did Tom leave you?
Yeah.
and how is it, and how have you shaped it in your own thinking?
Certainly. Well, thanks for having us here, first of all. And I think the community owes Dr. Elliott a great debt in getting the orchestra started. So I thought about this exact question if it would be asked, and it has a lot to do with kind of the orchestra becomes its direction becomes kind of a reflection of the interest of the director. So I took what was already a strong situation, which had lots of community support and lots of just very valuable support at the university, and sort of went on those strengths. And I am so impressed and so thankful that the model was set, and so it was really set up for success. And I've just sort of, I think the saying is I've kind of ridden the wave,
Mm-hmm.
if that's a correct word. So it has probably changed in certain ways. We now have 15 to 20 students, depending on the semester. And actually, many of those students are music minors or non-majors. And to me, that's it's kind of an important mission, because those kids will go out and become community members, and will maybe play in other orchestras similar to this in the community that they land in, and they may be music supporters. They may sit on orchestra boards. So I think it's a extremely important mission that that part of the orchestra plays. On the other hand, we have great community support as well, with the community players and with music lovers in the community. We're very fortunate here in Salisbury to have people like that. So they see the importance of a symphony orchestra and what it can do and the value there. So I feel very fortunate.
So let me ask you this. So what do you look for in a student that, say, for instance, you're looking at perhaps coming on to the orchestra, and what kind of caliber we're looking at? I mean, explain a little bit
Right.
about the process that you go through.
Well, I think there's, like Dr. Elliott said, they have to have had some experience in an ensemble. And I think that there's many of our students also study and take private lessons. Actually, most of them do, with either our concertmaster, which is Sachi Murasugi, my wife,
Mm-hmm.
and or they take lessons with me. And so we can kind of, from week to week, kind of look at their progress and kind of guide them and help them on the music. So it's a pretty neat thing that can happen there. And then, of course, we still only rehearse once a week. So I know what that feels like, doing concerts on that. But they're very attentive and they work hard. I have a really great group of people there. And there's a lot of excitement in the room and electricity because they all love music. So.
Now, you brought actually a piece here. Why don't you outline what the piece we're going to, a couple of minutes of it. Go ahead.
Yes, well, as I said, what the orchestra sort of finds as its focus is maybe a reflection of some of the interest of the director of the time. And I really like accompanying soloists and singers. And so that's been one of my interests. And it's been a lot of fun to do, pieces like the Brahms Violin Concerto and things like that. And to kind of, I'm a cellist myself, so I kind of get to see the music from a different perspective when I do that. And it's just kind of like becomes a new piece for me. So this recording, this next fellow, Dominic Armstrong, is just a wonderful operatic tenor. And we had him come about 2 or 3 years ago. And he is just amazing. And he's coming back in a couple of weeks. So his concert's going to be on December 12th, and it's at 7:30. And the concert is called Home for the Holidays, and he's singing opera numbers and some holiday kinds of tunes. And I believe here he's singing "O Holy Night" from our last concert a couple of years ago.
Okay, why don't we hear just a couple of minutes of that? And then, of course, Holy Night. And I want to turn to the presence of classical music in terms of its future and where it's going. Because some suggest, I know some suggest that if you learn classical, you train for classical music, it's a pretty limited field when it comes to getting the jobs and being able to sustain oneself in terms of the industry itself. I'll start with you, Tom, first. What do you think about, you have someone who comes in who's a student who learns their craft. What kind of prospects are there for someone who then go out and really earn a living with this kind of skill?
Sure. Well, an example would be Laura Murray, who played the Schindler piece. Laura I met when she was a middle school student playing French horn. But she was also the daughter of Doretta Murray, who was playing cello in our orchestra. And of course, Mom brought the daughter, and I met Laura, excuse me, and she was very competitive. And that's one of the qualities you have to have if you're going to fight your way up the professional performance ladder. The other dimension is the music education dimension, where they'll end up teaching in a public school or many, and their instrument maybe, and the other instrument. So they're going to be in either one of those two pockets. And as history has told us, music education in this country from the late 40s on through the 60s was just a powerhouse of activity. And we have sent many students into music education, and a lot of them stay here on the shore. So that's a direction that they are going to take. The other direction, I just want to interject that the president answered my call and hired Jeff because he and his lovely wife have given us the strong string that we need, background and teaching. And if you went to the orchestra concert, just the last one, you can hear how the strings have been elevated. And that I thank you for, Jeff, and your wife, and all your faculty people. It's wonderful, and it's happening and it's growing. So that route, I leave up to him. He's a tremendous player, and so he knows all about that. And if a student has those qualities, he'll see it, and then he'll help project it, and that's his call.
Hey, Dr. Schoen, what about that prospect? What do you tell students when they come in?
Well, I like them to keep an open mind, and I often tell them not to. I think there's the word is to that I used to use was to pigeonhole someone, to sort of place them in this category, because I can always recall times when certain students, when certain friends of mine surprised me at what they could do. And all of a sudden they would improve incredibly and had wonderful careers when you never expected that out of them. So I tell them to be patient and and that you can have a background from a small town or a small school, or you can have a background from a city. It doesn't matter. That people can be successful in music if they stick with it long enough and work very hard. So, you can be a string player and go to Juilliard and maybe decide later on that you want to be a lawyer or something, and it's not for you. You can go to a small state university somewhere and for your undergraduate, and then go to a conservatory for your master's, and you can possibly have a stellar career. It doesn't really matter. You can do it a lot of different ways. And there are a number of, I think we're fortunate here in this country that there are a number of places where you can find your niche, and you just have to be patient. At the university now, at the music department, we have a music tech track. So I actually had a bass player a few years ago that got that degree, and he played electric bass and stand-up bass. Mm-hmm. They like to call it that. Right. And he's down in Austin now playing and working in a studio, recording and playing there. So And then I've had students that that have gone the education route and have done really well. And we have had students that have that are in grad school now and have that are focusing on the performance. So I think as a performer, it takes a little bit longer. You do have to be thick-skinned. It's like
Right.
being an actor or a painter. You get a lot of no's, and you have to say, well, I'm still going to do this. I really love this. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to get that yes.
Well, on that note, Dr. Thomas Elliott, who created and established the Salisbury Symphony, as well as, of course, Dr. Jeffrey Schoen, who is now the conductor and a accomplished cellist. And we appreciate both of you stopping in and chatting about a little classical music here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
This has been Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Chris Rank produces and is our audio engineer. Don Rush is your host. For podcasts, visit our website, delmarvapublicradio.net, or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC 14. To view the schedule, view the daily times, or visit pac14.org.